Ever wondered how much safer your work at height operations could be? Imagine a world where every potential hazard is detected before it becomes a problem. Meet Tracker AI's smart PTZ camera system. This isn't just any camera, it's a game changer in work at height safety. Safety is paramount, right? It's the foundation of a productive and happy workforce. Despite stringent regulations, accidents still happen. Traditional methods often fall short in preventing these incidents. Enter Tracker AI's smart PTZ. This advanced system is designed to fill the gaps left by outdated safety measures. Tracker smart PTZ cameras deliver unmatched oversight so you can spot hazards before they become accidents. Offering 24/7 monitoring, it detects work at height safety hazards instantly, no matter the time of day or night. Think about it. Real-time monitoring, automated alerts, and even fall detection. It's like having a safety manager who never blinks. Real-time alerts trigger immediate action, ensuring that potential dangers are addressed before they escalate. Automated surveillance significantly reduces human error, making your work site safer and more efficient. It even detects PPE and welding work compliance, ensuring that all workers are properly equipped. Ensure every worker goes home safe. That's the ultimate goal, isn't it? Ready to elevate safety? Stay safe, stay smart. With Tracker AI, you're not just upgrading your equipment, you're upgrading your entire safety culture. The Tracker Smart PTZ camera features advanced AI algorithms that are constantly learning and adapting to new safety challenges. With 360-degree rotation and high-definition video, it covers every angle, leaving no blind spots. You can decide which areas to cover, what to detect in each area through a simple online procedure without ever leaving your seat. Through the setup, you can monitor what is happening on the ground in real time remotely. In a recent case study, a manufacturing plant reduced accidents by 40% after implementing our system. Features include night vision, advanced monitoring for PPEs, work at height and welding activities, including real-time analytics, making it a comprehensive safety solution. Our team of experts ensures the highest quality and reliability, constantly innovating to meet your safety needs. Plus, our dedicated support team is here to assist you 24/7, ensuring that you get the most out of your investment. Join the revolution in safety with Tracker AI's smart PTZ camera system. It's time to take your safety measures to the next level. Visit tracker.live to learn more and get started today. Together, we can create a safer, smarter future for everyone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Hacklab podcast. Today we are diving into one of the most critical topics in workplace safety, which is working at height in India using mobile elevating work platforms or MEWPs. In many industries, falls from height remain one of the leading causes of serious injuries and fatalities. While MEWPs have transformed how we work at height worldwide, India still faces significant challenges in awareness, training, and adoption. To explore this further, I'm excited to welcome Mr. Jason Wood, a global voice for powered access safety. Jason is a regional manager for the Middle East and South Asia at the International Powered Access Federation, the IPAF. With over a decade of experience driving MEWP safety awareness and having helped train more than 10,000 operators in India through IPAF's PAL card program, Jason brings a wealth of insights into how India can scale safer work at height practices. Thank you, Jason, for joining us today on this podcast. To start with, I would request you to introduce yourself for our audience.
Yep. Thank you very much. And, credit goes to yourself first for running podcasts like this, because every little bit helps, I think, in industry to keep people safe. So I'll just talk a little bit about Jason. I was introduced into industry late 80s, and I kind of fell into the, what would we call it, the rental business, which included access equipment. So I've never only been involved with MEWPs. I've been involved with scaffolding, mobile scaffolding, ladders, and kind of or my main goal or my main job around that kind of era was to manage the equipment and make sure that it was fit for purpose so that it could be rented out to end users. So like I say, I arrived in the rental business back in the 90s in the UK, um, and certainly we were very fortunate to have a good range of access equipment. Um, for myself, I'm based in Dubai. Um I've been in Dubai almost 17 years, and certainly driving safety, which then the South Asia region kind of bolted on to my regions then for IPAF. So, like I say, a wealth of knowledge for sure, but we're always still learning, and there's never a day where we think we're okay, you know. But yeah, like I said earlier, that the main core of my growing up in the industry was all through the
Mm-hmm.
UK, where we had a good variety of equipment, which are available, by the way, in
Mm-hmm.
India now. And the guidelines was very strict, meaning that if you think of we had some documents from HSC executive, so it could be the work and a height regulations came in 2005. We had the pure regulations, and we also had the management regs as well for contractors and obligations for contractors. So we were very fortunate, I think, in the UK in that era because we were going through big
Mm-hmm.
changes, and it did make a difference. It made a difference to the way on how we manufactured and how we
Mm-hmm.
used. And for me as a person, I was in, that wave, kind of riding the wave with how the UK was
Right.
changing. So it was good, very very good and right timing for sure. I would like to add on also that I had some good mentors behind me, so it wasn't always what Jason was doing. You know, my first mentor was a lady called Joy Jackson. So she was in my eyes, she was a champion in access
Mm-hmm.
equipment. So I was very jealous of Joy Jackson, and I wanted what she had, kind of thing. So yeah, it was good fun. Like I say, I've had some real good mentors, which helps for sure because we don't
Right.
know it all, and we need to learn ourselves also. Um, and then I'll move into my involvement with IPAF. So it all started, I would say, around about
Okay.
1996, um, where I was certified as an IPAF
Mm-hmm.
teacher to teach operators how to operate the
Mm-hmm.
equipment. So little did I know that once that door opened, my life would change, and I would end up in the Middle East. So yeah, it was good. We had a good crew behind us, and we used to deliver a lot of
Mm-hmm.
training. Um, and then I got involved with other associations, so working at height in the UK, got on their training committees, became vice chair of one entity before I moved to the Middle East. And like I say, it was the right time and the right era for the change in the UK. So I think I'm very fortunate, would be the right word, I think. Um, so yeah, that's a little bit about
Thank you,
Jason.
Jason. That's a incredible story, and we'll know more about you as we move forward. So, could you start by sharing what drew you to focus on work at height safety and powered access equipment?
Yeah, it kind of it came into my remit in terms of the job that I was doing at that time for the rental business. So I would cover a region of the UK where I had something like 50 locations all renting up this type of
Mm-hmm.
equipment, and the job kind of came up where we would focus on the equipment as well as training, and that kind of just grew on me
Mm-hmm.
then. I was excited, I was young, and I wanted to learn, so I would do some work with the rental companies and
Mm-hmm.
manufacturers, and I would just, delve into it so that I had totally understood, what a handrail looked like and this kind of thing, and what a specification looks like. Um, So we then moved into training, which then we opened up a brand new department. And again, that was a game changer because we were out on site teaching
Right.
people how to work safely. So it was always a mixed bag where the safety guys could be senior or they could be workers on the ground. But the fun we have teaching hands on, it makes a difference. And yeah, that was kind of where I got involved with the access equipment, let's say, and I just kind of grew and developed around that. And even back in the late 90s, early 2000, I was traveling even then to Singapore, doing some training through manufacturers, and it was great. It was different, and like I say, it was very exciting. I did play a quite a large role in one of the manufacturers who manufactured aluminium
Okay.
towers, and we were going through changes ourselves then on rewriting the instruction manuals and component schedules and creating the step-by-step guide on how to build the equipment
Right.
safely. And again, like I say, in the UK, it was kind of just before the work and height regs came out. We needed to change and we needed to keep people safe because falls is far too much. And it's not just India, it's worldwide. We're still seeing too many high recordings of whether they're fatals or they're just a serious injury. It's not meant to be
Right.
like this. And we can make a change for sure.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah. So, Jason, in your experience, what are some of the most common risks and causes of incidents when working at height in India?
Well, that's a tough question. This one is, I think. From my experience, I think there's two common root causes, and the first one certainly is, I would say that the management, certainly shortcomings and gaps of knowledge. There is definitely a gap between management and working at height. If we talk about risk assessment, I would say that a lot of work like risk assessments are inadequate. And then that takes me then into the rescue plans, I think, are not correct and definitely insufficient. And these are written by the HSE teams who has the gap of understanding what the products are and how to work safely. So I would certainly filter to management first, and then the actual process then of managing the workers at the height. And then the second part has to be training. There's training providers in India, and they're out in the thick of it in the projects, delivering training. But I think that the first step is how much knowledge does the
Okay.
teacher have on a subject, and if his knowledge has a gap, then the whole course has a gap, and naturally the content which is delivered could be insufficient, and it's not detailed enough. See, you've got to ask yourself a balance here. Is some training okay, or is some training not okay? And in my eyes, I thought, well, if we have small amount of training, it's okay. But really, that's not the answer because I could be teaching you the wrong way to work at height. So, like I say, there's two gaps. One is management. We need to make sure that our risk assessments and rescue plans, everything's in place and tried and tested, of course. And then we move on to the training. That seems to be a mixed bag of what qualification do we have. When really qualifications are out there and they have been tried and tested for many years. The whole idea of being trained and confident is to allow the workers to work safely on day two
Right.
after training. I'll sit on the word confident because I don't think you become competent after day one of training. That comes later. Um, so the educational gap in India is certainly a
Right.
issue. And I'll give you another example. We call it PPE. I'm sure you've
Yeah.
heard of PPE. Most people think it's hats, boots, and gloves and this kind of thing. But we have a specific PPE piece called a harness, a safety harness. I think in India we call it safety belt,
Okay.
by the way. But in reality, it's a safety harness. And the safety harness comes in three parts. So one, it needs to fit
Yes.
around the body. That's the main core of the harness. The second, excuse me, the second point is the lanyard. So that's like the lead from the body out. And then the third component is called the carabiner. So if you think when you're driving boom lifts, for an example, there's a lot of movement in the platform if you're driving over uneven ground. So the design of the MEWP is naturally going to move the body. So the idea is that the harness reduces the
Right.
movement. However, then we come to India. I would say 95 to 98% of harnesses in boom lifts are incorrect. So what happens is the lanyard is too long. So that means that it could be almost 2 meters of length. Well, if you think of a handrail height is 1 meter, so that means if I drive over uneven ground, I have the chance of being catapulted out. So that's
Right.
one headache. And what should happen? It should
Yes.
be short. It should be short enough so I can move and not give me that opportunity to be catapulted out. So we call it a restraint
Mhm.
lanyard. So restraint means that it keeps the body in the platform. Um, in India, we use fall arrest lanyards, meaning that the lanyard is designed for
Okay.
a fall. We don't want you
Mm.
to fall. So that's one big thing. And then, excuse me, if we talk about the hook, we use scaffolding hooks. So scaffolding hooks are no good in our business because sometimes they're too big to go around, fit around the anchor point. So the worker either clips his hook onto the handrail, so then if he's driving over uneven ground again, he's got almost 2 meters of lanyard now, not 1 meter. So the chance of being catapulted out and failure is really high. That risk is serious. So the carabiner should change, and the lanyards should change. The harness can stay the same, but we should change the lanyard to suit the activity of an elevated work platform. It's not a scaffolding, and I think that's where we've got to stop thinking. I have a scaffolding harness. I'm going to use it in a mute. It's two totally different activities, and one is designed for one, and one is designed for the
Right. Right.
second.
Right. So, like Jason, you just mentioned that the length is too large, so the person will hang around if the thing moves, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So if you think of the fall can impact the machine up to 600 kgs. So honestly, 600 kgs is a lot
yeah.
of weight, yeah, and that could be a sudden impact. So failure's got written all over this. If you think of a standard side load on a machine, it's either 20 kgs or
Hmm.
40 kgs. So, like I say, we need to stop the operator from being at that risk of catapult out because the implications are very high. Um, and then if you think a person is hanging, the burning question is how long has he got before his blood system slows down and he goes into trauma? You know, does the harness have trauma straps fitted to it so that it would release the pressures? Um, Again, 99% of harnesses in India, we don't see these, which they're actually a very good accessory when you're using a harness at height. But all this should be implemented into the risk assessment and rescue plan.
Right. So, Jason, is this because the equipment is not correctly manufactured?
No, you have some very good manufacturers actually in India.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm allowed to mention them, but yeah, you have some very good manufacturers. I've been working alongside these guys for many years in some of the safety shows that I've been attending, and I look at the products now being manufactured, and they're absolutely super. But then, as you turn the page, you also see the negative side, where you can have non-standard harnesses. I'll give you an example. My last show in Mumbai, I bought a harness off the street and I actually bent the hook with my hand.
Okay.
So, on the label, it was quoting the Indian standard, but in reality, it was like a washing line, the lanyard. It's not, you have to be careful with this, but answering your question about manufacturers, you have some good manufacturers in India for sure.
But then why the companies are not buying from good manufacturers?
Oh,
Is
it's
it
this
a price point or something?
100%. Yeah, education and price. You know yourself, we want everything with 50%. It's 50% cheaper, of course, but
Okay.
you're playing with people's lives. You can ignore the factors whether we talk about regulations and so on, but it's the activity what we should focus on as a safety practitioner. And we're going to give somebody a harness, and that's the last piece of component or piece of equipment that is going to stop the person hitting the ground. So I think it's fair to say let's buy the right kit. You know yourself, the buildings in infrastructure in India is tremendous, So you have some very tall buildings, and
Yes.
falls, is something seriously that we have to consider, I think.
Right, right, right. Okay, so moving forward, what are the biggest barriers to MEWP adoption you have seen in India? Is it awareness, cost, training gaps, or regulation? I think you kind of talked about this,
Yeah,
about the management and stuff.
yeah. So when we talk about the barriers, I think the first thing where I would say is lack of understanding of what the products are, um, and not having the confidence to read a specification sheet, and not understanding what the height looks like, what the outreach looks like. We could move into the safe working load element. It's not because sometimes safe working loads will change in terms of platform positioning. So the moment we start moving the platform around the chassis, then perhaps our safe working load will reduce then. Um, so I think that there is a lack of knowledge of understanding the equipment, and sometimes we see the equipment being too big to work in the area. So it's like overkill then.
Okay.
But the negative side of it means that I can't always position the platform where I need to. And when this happens, the operator has a tendency to climb out of the platform then because he can't quite reach. So he's now standing on handrails, feels he's okay because he's got a harness on, but in
I
reality, he's
see.
not okay because when he falls, he's got to start considering then how does he get back in the platform. Um, so yeah, there's certainly a big gap between education of knowledge of the equipment. In India, I would say we probably see around 17,000 machines. We've seen a 38% growth of machines arriving in India from new and second hand last year. So the machines are coming, and they're not all the same. So some are designed for narrow gaps. So if you've got obstructions, some are actually designed then to give you good weight of machines. So if you're in a shopping center, obviously you don't want to damage the floor. So like a static boom would be very good. Then it'd be half the weight of a mobile equipment. So like I say, I think the Indian markets, and especially the HSE teams and the site supervisors, really need to think about selecting the right kit to do the job. And that takes me then straight back into training again, which we've already discussed. If you're going to use this equipment, you should be trained properly. There should be no shortcuts. As an operator, you're actually you have a responsibility to keep safe, and carry out that work. Um, and you shouldn't put yourself at a risk if you're trained properly. Um, Another thing that we see a lot in India is the operation of the machine from the ground. And this is a bad thing because what that means is we have no proportional control in the platform, meaning that if I wanted to move the platform slowly, then I choose in the platform controls how slow I want that to go. Whereas when we start operating the machines from the ground, it's function. So it's up or down, it's left or right. So that means you have no control. Once you function it, it's moving. So
Okay.
that practice actually increases the risk of entrapment. So the ground guy is actually hurting the people in the platform. What we should do is remove the person from the ground. We don't need him, and let the operators operate from the platform. That's as simple as it needs to be. I don't know if you've ever heard this saying, but sometimes we have too many cooks in the kitchen. Um,
Yeah.
so keep it simple, and just one more final thing to add on there, and this kind of runs around in circles about when we start talking about regulations. The amount of people who will say to me that there's no regulations in India for elevator work platforms. Now, my answer to that is, of course, there's regulations. Whether we go back to the Factory Act in 1948, you know, there's even in the Act, we're talking about competency to operate plant and equipment safely. So there are regulations out in India. So whoever thinks there's not, really need to delve into this for sure. All I would say is that they're not as clear as other countries, but they are there. So we're obliged as an Indian contractor to follow the local law for sure. What you may not see that it says, hey, you need an IPAF license to drive a MEWP. But coming away from that, I think that all companies, if it's not clear, then why don't we go further and look at industry standard, which most developing countries work to? So when you talk about IPAF it sits in 83 countries, worldwide. So if I was a contractor in India, that's what I would be looking at is, which is the best industry practice to operate this equipment? Because I want productivity as well as safety. And if I'm not trained correctly, then surely that the job slows down, which is another page again. But yeah, in regards to the laws, there are laws here,
Yeah.
and people are foolish, I think, if they believe there's no law in India. There are laws,
Right.
and they are
Right.
strong. And you've had some presenters in the past who's mirroring, the UK to India and so on, and I would agree that there are some good companies in India who is following a very high standard, and I think that that's how I would look at it for working at heights. If I didn't know how to come down, I wouldn't be raising the platform up, because it can be quite scary, I think, if you don't know the main controls.
Right. Right. Yeah. But Jason, having laws and regulations and enforcing them are two different things.
Yeah,
So that is somewhere a bone of contention between India, UK, or the developed
yeah, but
countries.
I think we feel surely that India is going through a change of motion now. And I've been traveling to India for around 12 years, and I see a change. People are kind of
Mhm.
sitting up and think, well, hey, how can I do this better? You know, um,
Mhm.
because nobody likes injuries, nobody likes fatalities. It gives us, whatever industry we're in, it gives us, a bad vibe to it. And it's not just the person who's injured; it's the family we have to think about, and then, what about our colleagues who's actually working in the same area day two after the injury,
Right.
when we all knew that we was taking a risk. So I do feel that there is changes coming in, and obviously you've got some
Mhm.
fantastic associations in India. And I'll name two of them. One you've got National Safety Council, which absolutely does a fantastic job. And don't forget that you've got
Mhm.
another association called OSHI, and their focus is to keep people safe, help, let's say, the members with the correct documentation. So there's a lot of support behind the scenes, and this is why I think that
Okay.
India is going through a good change. And
Right.
India could change overnight. It could say, right, as from tomorrow, we're now going to follow this process or qualifications, and it can happen. It doesn't need to be complicated, for sure.
Right. Right. That's a good positive sign that it's changing. So that's a good thing. Jason, could you tell us about the IPAF PAL card program, how it works, and why is it so critical for operator competence?
Um, it's massive, to be fair. The qualification, forget the documentation. It's education is the key. So first of all, I would say that anybody who's attending an IPAF operator course, they are coached. So through classroom, they then finish their classroom coaching with an assessment. they have to pass the assessment, and then they move into the practical area. So the practical area is a few steps here. We do familiarization, practice, and we talk about emergency descent, how to rescue or lower the platform. So every step is covered from the classroom to the practical. The exam on the practical, the teacher will assess the student of his capabilities of driving the machine into position. So he's not going to damage any of the structure or the job sites. And also we have an exam then, a practical exam on moving the platform to height. So we combined it together and we run it over, we say a minimum of 7 hours when you have a full class. Because it's important that, it doesn't just become, paperwork orientated. It has to be an element of
Yeah.
practical. If I talk about the qualification, like I say, it's a massive topic, really. IPAF's qualification it falls under two ISO standards. Okay, so the first one is ISO 18878. So this standard reflects then on the way that we teach the students and how we give them their exams. So the teacher is confident enough to assess a student. He doesn't need to be, or there doesn't need to be a third party after training. We actually assess them
Okay.
part of training. Um, and then secondly, we talk about another standard. It's 18893. This one is. So this focuses on the inspection and maintenance of the equipment. So again, if I'm an operator, I need to check my equipment before I start my job. So the
Yes.
practical area of IPAF training is a combination of both then. And naturally that the inspection relates to three steps. So we need to check the documentation that it's been certified and in date. Secondly, then we need to do some function checks or visual checks first. So we're looking for any obvious damage, loose connections, this kind of thing. And then the last step is the function element of the platform. And the function should be from ground controls, platform controls, and emergency descent. So the confidence of the trained operator, if he needed to bring the platform down in emergency, then he would have that confidence. There's also another standard that we fall under. It's a British standard, so it's a BSEN 8460. So this standard, which is embedded into the course, this focuses on the safe use of the equipment. So, when you put the three together, it's actually quite a powerful course to attend. And then we take it through, like I say, the ISO standards. So that is great because that takes us to an international level. And we teach the same in India as we do in the UK, as we do in Brazil, in Mexico, in America, in the UAE. So that's really smart. The other good thing also is if I'm trained in India today and my job changes to the UAE tomorrow, my qualification can be transferred. I don't have to get retrained.
Right.
So that's
Hmm.
that's IPAS philosophy is if you need to move country, then your training is supported. Um, there's lots of things that has happened over the last few years. The way on how we issue certificates has changed. So now our certificates are digital. So an operator will
Hmm.
download an app, and his app becomes his license. All his credentials are put into the app, and his qualification is there, where he can just send through WhatsApp. If I was working, let's say, in one of the Tata projects tomorrow, and I needed to show the safety guys my licenses, I can just send it to them on email, WhatsApp, whichever. So it's really smart. And the logbook has become digital. So that means every time I operate a machine, I can put it just by typing as if I was sending a message into the logbook. You see, a very smart thing there is it actually identifies how much knowledge I have on the equipment. Because if I'm adding, 20 machines over 12 months, you could then see as a safety guy that, hey, Jason has been operating the boom lifts, scissor lifts, and so on. So it's really smart. the way on how the UK has developed the app has been tremendous. It's become a game changer for us for sure.
Right.
Globally, we teach around 240,000 students per annum worldwide. So it's a big it's a big aspect now of industry training. Um, so like in terms of the qualification, it certainly is a market leader as industry for sure.
Right. So, Jason, what kind of students or people can apply for this program?
Anybody who wants to work at height. Um, if their
Okay.
job is painting the ceiling and they need a scissor lift, then they can go on a local training course and come away with the confidence to operate. Or if they're a steel erector, they go on bigger machines. Again, they can go to a local training provider in India and have the same course. And
Okay.
that's why I like the qualification wherever we sit. The the training is the same. Um, so the qualification
Right.
is valid for 2 years in India, and then we fall into
Okay.
the renewal aspect then. So we reassess the operator so he doesn't forget things. Um, so it's
Okay.
a little bit less of training. It's more of an assessment. But you know what it's like. If you haven't operated a machine for 2 years, maybe we forget the controls. So and
Yes.
this happens. So the renewal process is every 2 years.
But yeah, so like in India, people who are operating the machines may not have the money to go and do this training. So how does this work? So the company sponsor them so that they learn how to operate
Yeah.
operator like
Yeah, the
machines.
companies put their operators through, or their tradesmen, let's say. Um, but there is also the gap where an operator is provided from a rental company. So the customer rents, let's say, the 100-foot boom lift, and the client is requesting that we have an operator. The problem which we have is that we've got a question: is the operator trained, and does he understand the safety aspects of the project? So it's always far better to train the workman, the tradesman, because if you think about the scissor lift, we're looking at maybe, as an average, 4 controls at the ground to up and down kind of thing, an emergency. And then in the platform, we may have 6 controls. So it's quite easy for a tradesman to actually function the machine and decide where I want to park it. Um, so it certainly, I think that India needs to question the groundsman, because we would need to question how much um, knowledge he has and what kind of training has he done. So currently in India, we teach around, let's say, 1,000 students per annum, but it's not enough really. We have a lot more movement of machines.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. To the population size of India,
yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
nothing.
Well, if you think your ratio of operators is probably 3 to 1, and we've got around 17,000 machines, so that gives you an idea of the gap. But it can be changed. I would say that the clients, the contractor, that if they train their own people, they have a license for 2 years. Wherever they move then on that project, then they've already done the training. So, it's I think the ground guy we should question, because otherwise it's if you're running a fleet of 100 machines on a project, that's technically 300 operators. That's a lot of people, eh? So yeah, that's something that we should look at.
Yeah, and I just wanted to check with you, like you know about
Yeah,
forklifts, right? So we talk about a lot of forklift to forklift collisions or human to
yeah.
forklift collisions. So I was, just thinking that the companies that manufacture forklift, they do not provide any safety mechanism on their forklift, like a
Yeah.
sensor to stop. So do you know why is
Um,
that so? Like, why don't
yeah.
the
If you
manufacturers do
step
that?
back, and it's the same with mutes, to be honest with you, we have collisions for sure. Um, Sometimes the collisions are at height, or sometimes they're just on the ground where I'm driving around the project. So it's the same. It's the same. I would strip it right back to the very beginning, where surely observation of the operator is key. So if he's trained correctly to observe his movement, then you're not going to have, or it'll
Okay,
be reduced then, chance of this. When we start relying on,
I see.
let's call it secondary devices, sometimes the device will trigger when there's an accident. We don't want the accident, so it's better to use our eyes and use our skill from our training course to reduce that risk. So if you're lifting up, then look up before you lift. If you're lowering down, look down before you lower. And the same for driving left and right.
Right.
It's we shouldn't be having these incidents, to be honest with you. But then I go back to what I said earlier. How good is training? How good is the teacher? What's his content? So I think that that these are the questions I would be asking. And if I was a contractor, I would encourage the contractor safety team to why don't you just turn up out of the blue on a training course and see what's really going on? If they're watching movies on Netflix, it's not good, eh? And just question, because we're relying on that training to be good operators then when we're back on projects. So yeah, I would heavily encourage this for sure.
Right, right, right. I mean, I'm just thinking like some people, some companies might think buying the secondary safety equipment is cheaper than giving a good training
Yeah,
program. Every company thinks in that
yeah.
financial aspect,
We've
and they
Yeah,
think that
we've
that
gone
is
through
better.
a lot of changes in MEWPs. So if I just cast my mind back to the Middle East, and it's not just the Middle East, we see the same incidents in India. So we call them entrapment, and that what that means is when the platforms are being raised to height, um, the operator doesn't stop the platforms lifting. What they actually do, they crush themselves, and they get themselves in a position where they've trapped the body, the platform's raising up and is connecting to the steel, let's say, above them. So this is a big problem. Obviously, if you was to observe my platform movements or check my motion movement, then we could reduce this risk for sure. Um, there are two types of secondary guarding in powered access, and one is electrical, so that kind of gives you a bleeping motion or bleeping sound. Um, so some of the manufacturers only trigger once you're trapped. So that's a bit late then, I think. Sometimes there are sensors available now as manufacturers are developing and the standard, where the secondary guarding, the electrical type, will actually start telling you that you're getting close before you get there. So, there are some good secondary guarding systems out there, but certainly the training is the king for sure. And then the second type of
Right.
secondary guarding we see is a sanctuary zone. So that is it's an extended platform, let's say. So instead of it being, let's say, 1 meter to your waist with as a handrail, it's now 2 meters, so it's above your body. But the issue which we have there
Okay.
is perhaps I've got a confined space at height. So if I've got a large frame, then I'm not going to get to my workplace. So whilst that will stop you from getting trapped, it encourages the operators to climb because they can't quite reach. So like I say, you've got to determine what works and what doesn't work. Machine manufacturers have
Right, right.
brought out some tremendous systems for sure. But again, keep the A, B, and C together and teach the guys first. I think, and that's what I would suggest for sure.
Perfect. So, coming towards the end of this podcast, I want to understand from you the impact of emerging technologies like telematics, AI-based
Yeah,
monitoring, or real-time alerts supporting this
yeah.
MEWP safety. So, how does that work?
Funny enough, we got to talk on this next week. Yeah, telematics is and technology has changed a lot. The way that we approach safe practices. So if I talk about telematics for a minute, so machines, we'll call them MEWPs, they can have a telematic system fitted to the machine. The way our qualification is produced, we have a system through the phone where it can connect to the card reader on a machine. So that means if Jason's been trained on machine one, as long as I'm registered to machine one, then I can put my phone up to to the card reader, and then it'll function like a hotel room. You have a key card, and you kind of just enter your room. If I'm not trained on that machine, then it shouldn't function. So, like I say, telematics is it is moving quite fast, and it is helping the industry because it's reducing the risk of unauthorized use. Because sometimes the guys operating is not the guys who should be operating. It's also
Yes.
got a supporting arm there as well, where it holds data. So if I'm working in one zone and I start driving it to another zone, then somebody will be alerted. So we call it a virtual fence. So it's out of the virtual fence, and now my
Okay.
management is going to say, "Where's Jason going?" So that there's a lot of good stuff in terms of the technologies, how they're changing now. But it's not new in our business. It's been here for a while. It's not brand new, telematics and so on.
Right.
And the other good thing is manufacturers have done a lot of work with breakdowns, let's say. So they could have a system onto, let's say, a scissor lift where once the machine stops, then they can analyze then what the issue is and feed that information straight back to the dealer, the rental company, and so on. So there's a food for thought there as well, that there's a lot of changes gone on within powered access fields. But for me, the big one has to be connecting the trainee, the operator, to the machine. And through telematics, we can do this. Like I say, it's not new. This is quite
Okay.
common. This is.
Right. 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 Jason, I was just thinking, like, if there is no human operating the machine, there's a robot operating the machine, then the training will change drastically because now training is in a different
Yeah,
sphere.
yeah. We don't have robots at the minute, but I'm sure if you went on ChatGPT or something, that you could create some robots of the futures or the future. But yeah, we don't have robots at the minute. I
Right.
think that we've got to leave powered access, stretch it as far as we can in terms of future and development. And like I say, the way that manufacturers are focusing on the safety aspect is tremendous. I came into this business and everything was manual, so there was no automatic.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example. I could be kind of winding down a stabilizer or an outrigger, and the machine is weighing 10 ton in weight. You've got four stabilizers, so it's quite a challenge. And if the ground is uneven, then you're relying on leveling devices and things like that. But manual, we never in them days we never had automatic. It was just a case of approach your ground and hope for the best kind of thing. Um, but yeah, no, it's certainly machine manufacturers are putting a lot of time and effort into solutions for the customers for sure.
Okay. So, Jason, before we leave, just can you give us one piece of advice for Indian industries looking to improve their work at
Yeah,
height safety
this is
standards?
very easy. First of all, think of the standards. What is your standard today? Analyze what kind of teaching you're receiving, and how is the operators performing? Are you happy with them? If productivity on the project is slow, then there's a gap somewhere, and we need to fill that. So I would say, definitely focus on professional training to the real standard, um, and then start focusing on the demonstrating your standard then to clients. Let them know what type of training your operators are receiving. Analyze over 6 months maybe of what your breakdowns were the 6 months prior. And little things like this makes a big difference. I'll give the UAE for an example. So in the UAE, you cannot use a platform without an IPAF qualification. So this has
Okay.
become quite big now. But what I've noticed with clients, contractors, that they're actually, when they're filling out a tender, that they actually put down that they one, an IPAF member, and secondly, that they have operators IPAF trained. And these guys are winning work then because there's a safety aspect then that the client would like to see. Like I say,
Right.
think about it. Don't think of it just as training. Expand on this for sure. Um, if we talk about IPAF, we've been driving this safety since 1983. And has the message changed? I don't think so. I think that our vision has always been saving lives and reducing the risk of incidents.
Mhm.
Our training material has changed over the years, and now it's so robust. I can honestly say, when a student is sitting through the course, he's really on a learning journey. And when you combine all this together, like I say, the big takeaway would certainly be, get your house in order, have a look, analyze what you're dealing with when working at heights, and then fix it. And fix it in such a manner that it doesn't become complicated.
True, true. So, thank you, Jason, for sharing your deep expertise and passion for making working at heights safer in India and beyond. Today's conversation highlighted that investing in MEWP training, proper equipment, and awareness isn't just about compliance, it's about saving life and transforming workplace culture. To our listeners, if your organization works at height, this is your call to action. Prioritize certified training, choose the right equipment, and make safety a daily commitment. Jason, we truly appreciate your leadership and dedication to this cause. And to our audience, stay tuned for more such episodes where we continue to explore innovations and leadership driving safer, smarter workplaces. Until next time, stay safe, stay proactive, and keep safety at the heart of your operations. Thank you and have a nice day. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Thank you very much.